This is called Tuolumne Meadow. I woke feeling chilly, even under several army blankets. The elevation was 8,600 feet. I was in a heavy canvas tent cabin, but it was barely spring in Tuolumne Meadows and very cold. They had warned me to load the small pot-bellied stove the night before so I could get a fire roaring quickly in the morning. I leapt from my bed, ran to the stove, and struck a match. I can picture myself at a distance, a gangly 14-year-old boy in white briefs, somehow unable to light a match. So I ran back to the bed and wrapped myself in blankets until I stopped shivering. I was born and raised here in California, but I had never lived much above sea level. This was a cold I wasn't used to. On my second try, the match connected with the paper connected with the wood, and I was quickly back in bed, letting the stove warm the freezing air. In a way, it was all silly. If I had been tougher, I would have just gotten dressed and grabbed my pack and gone to breakfast. Today would mark the start of a 6-night trek among some of the most beautiful meadows, rivers, waterfalls, trees, and mountains anywhere in the world. Glen Aulin, May Lake, Sunrise Meadow, Merced Lake, Vogelsang Peak. I was a hiker and a camper, but not a backpacker. That being said, this trip would be very civilized. All we had to carry was our clothes, with food and bedding provided by the Yosemite High Sierra camps. But still, I was about to walk 60 miles. The trip would be special because of the places I would see, the challenges I would meet, but also the people. Most important, I'd be hiking with my mother and my aunt. The Unzicker sisters were one generation removed from the farm and had grown up in Wisconsin. They loved the Sierra, but they brought Midwestern stoicism and resilience, and they had invited me on this trip. Other friends had moms who wouldn't even car camp, or who went reluctantly with mason jars pre-filled with martinis. Other moms dressed more stylishly. Other moms went to beauty parlors and flirted a little bit with us boys. My mom hiked, played tennis, baked bread, canned fruit, cooked, cleaned, and sewed. She didn't flirt at all. I don't think she would have known how. And yet, my closest friends remember her warmth and her kindness and the fact that she always looked people in the eye when they talked to her. Her sister Janet was from the same stock, but less domestic. She never married or had kids and lived in New Jersey, right across from Manhattan. And they were both already in the mess hall when I got there, drinking coffee, shorts, boots, wool socks, practical plaid shirts, and bandanas. I laid my pack with theirs and sat down. There was news. We'd be leaving within the hour, but the guide we had anticipated was not coming. We would have a substitute arriving soon from San Jose, an older man, a ranger, and a botanist named Dr. Carl Sharsmith. He was an important person, a man who, when asked what he would do if he had one day to spend in Yosemite, he said, "I would sit by the Merced River and cry." He was a man who had discovered several flowers, who taught at San Jose State, and who drove a 1935 Ford because he liked it and saw no reason to trade it in. We walked out to meet him. He looked distinguished in a flat-brimmed felt campaign hat and dark green wool coat and pants. I knew I was in the presence of greatness. Soon we were off. What I remember most are the miles hiking through the meadows along the Tuolumne River, grasses and flowers and incredible vistas, and the wonderful sensation of not having to turn back. When we got to camp, Dr. Sharsmith persuaded us to take another 6-mile round-trip excursion to Waterwheel Falls. A nice day, a beautiful day. But why was this a memorable, magical, important day? 3 reasons. I was with my mom and my aunt, but something of a peer. There was no permission asking or advice sought or offered. We mostly didn't walk together. I was in the High Sierra, seeing things I had never seen, launching a week of discovery. I was hiking with Dr. Sharsmith, who knew every inch of the trail and showed us details we never would have noticed. a man whose life had been changed by reading John Muir and was the closest I would come to meeting Muir myself. The proof of the importance of the day is I thought of it tonight when I started to write, and that the writing flowed so easily into the foreground. Just a few hours that became a cornerstone of my lifelong love and appreciation of the West. In just a minute, we're going to accept an offertory for the work of the church. And if you're new or visiting, just let the basket pass you by. We're going to do a medley of two songs that are both important ones to me. The first is the modern spiritual A Quiet Place by Ralph Carmichael. And the second is the folk song Shenandoah. And a quick aside, we sang Shenandoah in elementary school. And even as a child, I could feel the intense longing in that song. The conversation between a person and a river. I didn't understand it, but I felt it. Thank you.
And my piece is titled, Y'all and Us Are We. I grew up in the city of Manila. Traumatized by food scarcity during World War II, my parents created a farm-like residence in the middle of the city. We woke up to the sounds of roosters crowing in the morning, and moments of the day were marked by dogs barking, ducks quacking, pigs grunting. Seasons in our home were indicated by the harvest times of the tropical fruit trees in the hilly yard. My early exposure to the word adobe were the giant rocks that adorned the garden. These served my brothers well when they played their favorite garden game, Indians versus Cowboys. It was a different time, a different world. They learned the game from watching television programs from the United States of America. Our property had a natural, very muddy pond populated by freshwater fish and snails. The French call them escargots. Annually, we harvested cotton called kapok to fill our pillows. I learned to climb trees at a young age. In the Philippines, we had a wet and a dry seasons. That's it. Typhoons rattled our idyllic garden with mighty gusts of wind and torrential rain. If you watched the movie Forrest Gump, the scenes when it seemed to rain forever is how it goes in Southeast Asia. Manila is below sea level, and streets get flooded from heavy rains that go on and on for days. Nature reminded us that our politicians were not doing their work of building a sewer system that works. That was then, and it still continues to flood today. Our home environment felt symbiotic with the natural world. We did not have to think about nature. The natural world's scents, sounds, visuals, emotions, and tastes were part of our daily lives. As children, we learned about living and non-living things in science class. The textbook-driven lessons about the natural world comprised lists of words and graphs, pictures and illustrations. We memorized everything we had to learn, from different kinds of clouds like cumulus and stratus to balancing equations in chemistry. Other than the horrifying experience of dissecting a live frog in middle school, learning science felt mechanical, and memorizing vocabulary seemed disconnected from who we were as humans or human animals. I don't recall our science teachers ever speaking of humans as animals, though. I remember discussing in science class how we were still unsure about the beginning of life. In our school, we were taught two versions. The first involved scientists using fossils from over 3 billion years ago to infer the first signs of life. Solar energy fuels photosynthesis combined with geothermal energy that supplies nutrients and life, and that began the evolution of Earth. These ingredients were necessary for life to become what it is today. But I spent my K-12 years in a Catholic school. I learned the second version, which in the Philippines was the most culturally accepted theory of how life began. From the biblical text of Genesis, the 7 days of creation, and the story of Adam, the protagonist, Eve, the tempest and seductive woman, and the serpent that ended their love story. In religion class, we were told to believe that the world was created in 6 days. God rested on the 7th day, Sunday, so we had to go to church on this day. I wondered why we went to church on the day God rested, I asked my mom. And she said, "We don't want to commit a mortal sin and go to hell," and that was it. On a visit back to my school a few years ago, one of the retired principals, her name is Chuchi, Sister Chuchi, had a secret to share with me. "Gigi, do you know that when you were still a student, the teachers were relieved if you were not a student in their class?" I was surprised by her question. I knew I preferred extracurricular activities, but I thought I was a good student. She explained, "That's because you keep asking why in class." I took a deep breath and remarked, "You are joking." She was not. Last month, my husband and I went on a safari in South Africa. Well, this was considered the wild, where animals lived in their natural habitats. I was surprised that these properties, were surrounded by human-made electric fences owned by wealthy families, including one large safari land owned by Prince Harry. We were driven by guides on Toyota Land Cruisers with no windows and roofs. We rode close to wild beasts. I was repulsed at the sight of lions eating the carcass of a dark-skinned animal. We saw families of elephants, wildebeests, rhinoceros, giraffes, wild dogs, cheetahs, deer, nyalas, antelopes, and more. At one point, we were almost trampled by a line of elephants because the guide accidentally drove in their path. We rode a boat that brought us approximately 3 feet away from families of hippos soaking in the water. The experience connected me to a larger natural world where various natural systems intersected. These were the scenes I watched on television, I told myself, much like the documentaries hosted by David Attenborough. Fellow safari visitors remember the Disney movie Lion King and the animals and their living environments that we were seeing for real. I realized then that the power of media in shaping our understanding and connection with nature. When the safari ranger asked on day 1 what we wanted to see, my wish from the movie Lion King told me, I want to see live hyenas. And we did. Hyenas were scary looking. I couldn't believe how much I compared the real ones with the singing hyenas in the movie Lion King. DNA makes us who we are and scientifically explains how we differ from cows, elephants, crabs, fish, plants, and the rest of the natural world. As I wrote, I thought that humanity is who we are in nature, but not all nature is human. Nature is life. DNA defines the algorithms of life and is nature's way of differentiating, connecting, thriving, and evolving. I have learned facts have to be evidence-based, which makes the Bible's theory of the beginning of the earth a myth. Humans exist because of our reciprocal relationship with billions of microorganisms. The ecosystem exists within and outside us. When I think of nature and life today, I can't help but recall the COVID pandemic, the impacts of climate change, religious beliefs, and facts versus fiction, war, guns, immigration, race, and the internet. The good and bad that humans do. Are these also part of nature? Maybe so. What makes us different from animals and plants is that we are on top of the food chain and we can change the earth, and we have been. Animals and plants are integral to the natural system and survive when they can. Humans have evolved and can change the natural system for good and not so good. I wonder, as educators, would life on Earth be better if science education was not just about lists of facts and mechanical drills of balancing equations? Why did our education not focus on building upon and growing human curiosity and creativity? Why don't schools encourage students to ask why? The motivation to want to know and understand is a lifeline of humanity. The immersive safari experience brought back memories of my childhood home when each day felt y'all and us with the rest of the world are we. I fell in love with the giraffes.
My name is Liz, and I'm going to tell you about the Summer of the Whales. But one word before I start. This is a piece about nature, but it's also about loss. If you've had a loss recently, or for any reason find these words difficult to listen to, please take care of yourself. Get up, take a walk, go get a drink, grab a tissue at the back. Whatever it is you need to take care of yourself, please do that. You're among friends here, and mostly we want you to be well. I scan the horizon looking for them. It's chilly and foggy, the hour early, the beach ghostly. The marine layer just offshore will burn off by midday, if my experience is any guide. I have been here many mornings. I don't have long to wait. Suddenly one bumps the surface and tentatively, then plunges again. Another breaks through, visible for a moment, then submerges. A third, emboldened by his brothers, hits the surface and rises in a joyful breach. Tons of glorious, soaring, blue-gray mass. This summer, I have made the journey west over the mountains many times. I roam beach after beach, from Montara to Miramar to Martins, Redondo to San Gregorio to Bean Hollow, once all the way down to Waddell Creek. I drive and I walk. Sandy beaches, rocky shores, my body soaking up the negative ions, my eyes restlessly seeking. If I am patient, I am rewarded. They are always there. It is the Summer of the Whales. Why are they here every day in great numbers just offshore? They're not supposed to be. It's summer, not the right time. There's some kind of scientific explanation for this, something about temperatures and currents and krill moving closer to shore, El Nino maybe, climate change. I think those are somewhere in the scientific explanation. But I take no notice of those things. I have another explanation, this Summer of the Whales. You sent them to me. You died June 9th. Once the arrangements were made and the people went home and the river of casseroles slowed to a trickle, I was left alone to figure out what kind of life could possibly lie ahead. When the feelings threatened to drown me, when I couldn't figure out what else to do, I would find myself in my car, heading west. From the first visit, the whales were there. Humpbacks, grays, blues, not sure what kind, but there they were in astonishing numbers. Whole pods of them, churning up the water, sailing into the air, playing and singing and feeding and putting on a show. One day, it took a very long time for them to arrive. I think I was at Martins Beach, and the sunlight was very bright that day, bouncing off the surface of the water in hard diamond shards. I looked out over this lovely cove, drinking in the vastness of the sea and the sky. As I stood there taking it all in, the air suddenly started to shimmer. Like those squiggly lines in Van Gogh's Starry Night, a pulsing energy danced all around me. Beneath the waves, sea creatures sailed the depths, a watery world teeming with life. The sky above was bursting with atoms and organisms, like something important was just about to happen. It was all there. The fact that I couldn't see it was beside the point. Just when I was settling into the idea that I would not see the whales that day, they appeared. 1, 2, 5, 10, a pod, a tribe, a world, churning up the water of the cove, making their presence known, delivering on a promise. You know what they call this, Kars? Faith, a belief in things unseen. And I know, as surely as I know anything, that you sent it. A message from the realm where you are now, a place my tiny human brain can't fully understand yet. Your wave from beyond, your letter of love, your reminder that I am not alone, even when I feel like it. Eventually, their message delivered, the whales withdrew. The water settled, the cove became quiet. The sun sank inexorably west, completing its cycle. It was time to go. I trudged back to the car, got in, and drove east, back over the mountains. I still go to the beach a lot, and I always search. But the summer of the whales would never recur, at least never again with the drama or in the numbers that happened that year. But there was something that summer gave me, a nugget of knowing, tiny to the point of invisibility at first, a realization that arrived in the wake of your shattering departure. Life is hard, but that doesn't make it any less of a miracle. And even now, though you are there and I am here, it is not all over between us.